Hi there, welcome to this build of a 45-inch wingspan Quiver. Now the Quiver is a scaled down version of the much larger Quaker Flash or Flying Quaker, which was a free flight model from the late 1930s, a really iconic design. And we're building this from a great set of plans which we've got on the wall behind me, which you can download off the OuterZone website for free. And there'll be a link in the description below this video where you can find those plans. Now in the previous videos we've got the fuselage more or less completed, and I'm really pleased with how this is looking, and we've added stringers to it which really, to my mind, set it off. And the stringers aren't actually on the plans, they were omitted for some reason. Now in the last video we got the tailplane and elevator kind of assembly built. These are still together and need separating, but we'll do that at a later stage. And we also got the fin and rudder assembly. So now in this video we're going to be moving on to the wings, and that's going to be really good to get these wings done. I don't think we're going to get them joined today, but hopefully we're going to get the right and the left panel completed, ready for us to join, perhaps in the subsequent in the next video. But once you start getting the wings finished and you can fit them on the fuselage, you really get an idea of what this bird is going to look like. So I've done some prep already. What I will do is I'll move the camera around and I'll get this stowed away safely out of the way, and we'll have a look at what we're going to be doing. Right, well, I've got a plan of the wing printed out and taped down to my flat balsa building board, and I've got some plastic on top of that so that we don't stick to the plans when we're gluing up the wing. Now I've prepared some of the components. I've got the wingtips, which hopefully you saw the video when I was laminating these a couple of videos ago, and I've got them labelled top right and that one's top left. That one's top left. And I've labelled them because I not only want to get them in the right place, but I want to make sure I have a nice flat smooth surface that goes down on the plan, and the rougher surface that's going to need profiling on the top. So I've got the wingtips. I've got the trailing edge, which is 3/16 by 3/8. So just check that, yes. And we've got a 1/4 inch square leading edge. Now the 1/4 inch square leading edge is hard balsa. This is kind of a medium balsa. And I've also got the pieces for the next wing, which I'll just put out the way, keep those nice and safe and flat. Now the spars on this, you can see here it says 1/8 square spruce top and bottom. So I've got the spars cut to length, and I've got another couple down here, so we've got top and bottom, and all of these pieces of balsa are lovely and straight. The last thing we want is kind of wavy balsa. If there's a little bit of a bend in it, it's not too bad, but we don't want anything too major. But as I said, these are lovely and straight. And we've got the wing rib sandwich, which we made right in the very first episode when I was doing some prep, but I haven't cut out the slots for the spars, for these spruce spars, and that is probably, I think, going to be the first job I'm going to do. So let's just move that out the way, and we'll get rid of this wingtip for a second. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my razor saw. I'm going to use a square to line up the where the spar goes, and I'm going to draw a line across the wing, and that will make sure that we get these slots nice and square. The last thing we want is to be cutting them crooked, because we'll end up with a crooked wing. So I'm going to mark these up, cut them out or cut down with my razor saw, and I will cut down to the required depth. I will then take the wings out, and I'll just nick out that little bit of balsa with a single little cut at the bottom of where the spar goes. Just flick that out, and then hopefully our spars should fit. But as I say, I'll take the ribs out to do the removal of that bit of balsa and do them individually and make sure each one fits nice. Now, when we've got that done, the first thing to do is to put down the spars in position like this. And to hold them down, normally I would pin through the balsa at the ends and also in the middle a little bit. But I can't do that. So what I've done is I've got some big pieces of balsa and I've just cut in a little bit of a slot that just pushes over the spruce like that. So what I can do is I can just pin it down, a couple of big pins in either side of these pieces of balsa, and that will stop this from moving around. So it's a good way to hold it in place. And the last thing I'll say before I start doing those ribs and laying it out is that the wingtip on this set of plans shows the upper surface of the tip coming down to meet the bottom spars, so it slopes down at the wingtip. This is contrary to traditional Quaker designs where the top of the wing was totally flat right out to the tip and the underside of the wingtip would come up to meet the tip. So I'm going to do this like a traditional Quaker. So I'm going to deviate from the plans here and we're going to keep this top wing right to the tip nice and flat and slope the bottom up. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to set it out with all of the main ribs first, get that all glued, and then we'll build the tip, because we're going to need to put a little bit of spacing under that tip to get it exactly right so that top spar just feeds in nice. So we'll do that later. So just a quick note on cutting these slots with the razor saw. I've marked across and I've marked the depth. I've put a pencil line on and I just used a bit of the spruce to check that. Now what I'm doing is I'm putting these so it's level, or so this piece, the bottom surface of the rib is horizontal, and I'm just using a spirit level to make sure that that is correct like that. And then I'm going to use my razor saw to cut across, and by eyeing up the razor saw I can make sure I get it absolutely vertical, so I get my cuts which are nice and vertical on this horizontal surface. So if we don't do that and we just have this sort of flopping around, we could end up making cuts that are sort of like that rather than nice and square with the bottom of the wing. So anyway, I'll get on and do this, but I just thought I'd mention that. Right, just a very quick tip on getting this set out. I've got all the slots cut in the ribs now, and I've got them on the bottom spars, as you can see. And I've gone along and looked sideways and just pushed the ribs down and made sure that they seat down fully and there's no gap underneath. But it's quite difficult to see sometimes, particularly as you get older and your eyes aren't brilliant or aren't as good. So what I do is I get a torch and I just put it like that, and if your rib isn't seated down far enough, you'll get a little bit of light shining under your rib. So I just find that a really good way of seeing if I've got them fully seated or not. So I'll get this top spar in now, the top two spars. This rear spar I've actually just run down the one edge with a David plane and a piece of one of my sanding sticks, because if you look at the ribs here, you can see that because of the slope of, if I bring that in a little bit, the slope of the rear of the rib there, you're actually going to miss the top of that spar. It's not going to be a full square spar, and rather than sand the top of that spar to meet those ribs when I've got it all set up, I thought if I just take the corner off, it probably doesn't show it's that small, but just take the corner off so that it's less sanding and possible risk of damaging the ribs. So I'll get these spars in now and then we'll have a look before we start gluing. Right, well, I've got this all set up now and we're ready to glue, or at least glue the ribs and the spars. Still got the tip to do. A slight change to plan. I found that the ribs were slightly longer than shown on the plan here, or on this plan view of the wing. And what I've done, and it was something I was thinking about anyway, but I don't know whether I'd have done it, but it's made it stronger, and that is to just do some little slots or notches in this trailing edge here for the ribs to slot into, and that's given me about the same chord. I mean, there's only a couple of mil in it, so it wouldn't make any difference really, but I've just put those slots so that the ribs now go into that trailing edge and it's a little bit stronger. I've used a straight edge to pin this trailing edge down so it's nice and straight. I've checked that all my spars are lovely and straight, and also putting a ruler on top to make sure that they're not dipping or there's no sort of lumps or rises. And I've also viewed from this end, looking down, got down and looked along here to make sure it's absolutely straight and there's no wiggles, and it all looks absolutely lovely, really nice. I've got the bird mouth just pushed in. If you get down to this end and look from the end there, you can eye up the bird mouths and they all line up beautifully. Now the terminal rib here is slightly smaller, and I've used this template. I just put it on a piece of balsa and just cut round it, cut the slots in, and I fitted that in place. And it's not touching the bottom two spars, it's only touching the top two spars, because those bottom spars are going to need to be cut slightly and angled up, and we want to get all of this absolutely flat right out to that wingtip. And another thing to make sure is that by getting a ruler, where's my smaller ruler, getting another ruler and just running this along the top of the ribs, just to make sure that this terminal rib here, which is smaller, is the same height all the way down to the tip as the rest of these, because we don't want a little bit of a dip when we come to the wingtip. It wants to be all nice and in line, all nice and straight. So I think now we're ready to start gluing these, and I'm going to use a square block and I'm going to glue them with CA, and I'm going to check each rib is absolutely vertical. I'm going to use my set square to check that the ribs are square with this trailing edge, and just go through and check all of that. And once I'm sure it's absolutely right, I will CA at the back, the spars. I will probably leave the bird mouth until right at the very end. So I'll just work my way along very slowly and just make sure these are absolutely right. And of course, very critical, this last rib, to get that right so we don't have a dip. So I'll glue this up now, and then we'll focus our attentions on the leading edge and the tip, I think. Right, well, I've got this all CA'd now, and it's nice and square and it's solid and it's looking great, and I've eyed it up, I've eyed the bird mouths, and they all look really, really nice and square and in line. I haven't done this root rib here because this will get done when we join the wings together. The two root ribs will need to be angled slightly to get the dihedral, so we won't worry about that. We'll move out to this wingtip now. And what we're going to do is we want to make sure that this comes lovely and straight or flat right out to the wingtip. So what I'm going to do, I've got a piece of, I think this is 2.5mm balsa. I tried lots of different bits of balsa. Something that would just slide under there to support that rib, but won't either lift it or let it sag. So I've put that under there like that, and now if I get down and eye this up, we can see that those two spars are lovely and in line now. They're lovely and straight, and it can't move down because of that that piece of balsa. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to put a block either side like this. I'm going to make sure that it's nice and square, and then I'm going to pin those blocks, because what I want to do is I want to hold that rib precisely where I want it. I'm going to CA it, and then we need to work on this wingtip. I need to cut in to the trailing edge here to allow that to go in. Of course, this trailing edge needs to have quite a bit of balsa that comes off. It angles right down like this, so that just feeds straight into there. So I'm going to, once I've got this pinned, I'll mark this up and we'll start to trim this wingtip and the leading edge, which again is going to have a little bit of a step in it, so that will nicely splice into there. And then once we've got those two joints done, we need to make sure we get the height right on this tip to get that flat top to the wing. Right, I've now got this tip in place in the correct location. I think I'll check it again, but it's been really fiddly. It's been difficult to line up the rear and front of the rib, as well as the ends of the spars, and I've had to take off quite a bit on the underside of the tip here and at the front, just so it will lift up at the tip, more of an angle. But now these spars are nice and straight, come through to the tip, and we've also got the ribs in line, so that should be flat however you look at it. So I think, as I said, it's been really fiddly, and I am going to have to probably just put a little bit of balsa on here to build it up, and also on the leading edge just to build it up. But I'm sure that will be absolutely fine, and I may even put a little bit of a gusset on the inside here to strengthen it, but we'll see what it looks like. As you can see, these spars at the bottom are still flat with the board, and they will need cutting here just slightly so that they break a little bit and bend up to meet the wing tip, but we'll get to that once we take it off the board. Right, well, I've now got the wing off the building board and it's looking great. I'm really pleased with it. It's lovely and straight. Hopefully you can see that, and there we go. And we've got this lovely flat top to the wing, which I've been emphasizing throughout this video because I just really wanted to get that right. Now it does look like there's a little bit of a kick right at the tip, and that's because there is just a little bit of a rise just on this laminated tip, which is going to come off when I profile it. So I'm really pleased with how that tip is looking, and you can see I've just cut the spruce spars just a little bit with the razor saw. I've used this razor saw a lot today doing this, and I've just bent them up. They haven't actually broke, but it's allowed them to bend without bulging this bit out and putting a lot of stress on. And I've just tied those in to the bottom of the wingtip there. Hopefully that shows up, and I'm really pleased with it. I mean, there is still a lot of profiling to do to get this to look right, but it's certainly there and ready to be profiled now. And like I say, it's been quite difficult just getting that laminated tip just right, but it was worth the effort. And one thing I will say is that the rib, the template for the rib that we've got on the plans here for the terminal rib is actually too deep, but it doesn't really matter. The top profile we got right before we glued it, and the bottom that was sticking down, I just trimmed off the excess. So anyway, now we've got one, we've got to get on and make the other one. So that's what I'm going to do now, and once I've got that done, we'll come back and have a look at the pair and see how they look. Right, I've now got both of the wings completed, and it's really exciting to see them, and you can imagine how this wing's going to look when it's joined together. As I've said, I just love this kind of Quaker look to the wing, where you've got this lovely flat top, the kick up, and that lovely sweeping thin profile for the wingtip. I think it just looks really, really nice. Now, I've done the gross sanding to get the shape more or less right, but I haven't done the bull nose or rounded the wingtips or the tapered edge on the trailing edge. Two reasons really. One, I quite like to do that when I've got the wings joined together, and I've had time to think about the best way of doing it and how it's going to look. But also from a practical point of view, when I come to join the wings together, which is going to be the next video, it's nice to have this sharp edge on the front here, and also the sharp edge on the bolster at the back here, because with the wings being more or less identical, hopefully, they're good reference points for measuring when we set this up before we glue the dihedral braces in and we set the wing forever. So it's, like I say, it's good to have those sharp edges. I am going to be joining this with some fairly big dihedral braces, and I may even be putting in some shear webbing as well, just to try and make it just that little bit stronger. But to be honest, with these 1/8 spruce spars, it actually feels quite a sturdy wing. So anyway, I've had great fun building these, and it was quite a nice wing to build, although, as I've said earlier, just getting these wingtips right, getting the tilt right, was a little bit tricky, and I have had to just fill in a little bit due to the angle. But it's balsa, and balsa's lovely to work with and very forgiving. So anyway, I'm going to draw this video to a close now, and I hope you found it useful and interesting, and please come back and see how we get on in the next video where we join these wings together. And that is really going to be an exciting moment. We can get them on the fuselage and just see how it looks. So anyway, thanks very much for watching. I hope you've enjoyed it.